Ladies and gentlemen, if you look out of the left-hand side of the aircraft, you'll be able to see the spectacular floating islands. Please take a moment to enjoy the view. Hello, this video concerns my old Tomb Raider Minecraft Edition map, released in 2014. I am going to revisit this world 11 years later to determine whether the map still functions on the latest versions of Minecraft. For context, it was created before the observer block existed. All triggers rely on simplified redstone, which should still work. The evolution of the game has allowed me to add a minimap, echo effects in rooms, and a graphical shader. That said, I expect numerous technical problems because the game's code has changed, and to identify them, I must test everything. The first bug does not come from the map, but from Java. The way fonts work has been reworked, and because the texture pack contains a custom font, these gaps appear. Other files in the pack now have new names, so the menu color is no longer taken into account. I therefore deleted the font to launch the game. Here we can see that the map truly dates back to November 2014. There have been so many updates since. The skin is correctly installed and the block textures seem identical. I added the minimap to show the chunks of the map that are loaded. The main concern in 2014 was avoiding lag. For now, I am in front of the giant title screen, which had been handmade. It is a map created in adventure mode, meaning it contains rules. Here I am checking that mob spawning is still disabled, as well as the weather. Because even if we could change the time using commands, it caused major issues with the shadows that were irreversible. So when a level took place at night, it was surrounded by a fake sky. A rather humorous detail, as this was already the case in the early Tomb Raider games. However, the levels had natural illumination through holes in the ceiling to mimic the lighting of the original games. And it's funny to see that the remaster developers placed the holes in exactly the same spots. Now that the shadow bug is fixed, it's still possible to leave the day-night cycle on and play Venice at night. It gives an entirely different atmosphere. Or what about the Tibetan foothills under the stars? Or even Barkang Monastery in the rain? I think I may have just invented a new game mode. Look, I even added some fog. I like fog. It sounds like frog. And frogs are awesome. On top of that, with the torch, it creates an immersive first-person effect. Ooh, that's spooky. Teleportation still works, which is reassuring since the game contains more than 1,000 command blocks of this type. This is the tutorial, which is a trick to discreetly load the level selector while the player reads the instructions. Some instructions that no longer appear here, but they looked like this. The game uses only 2 triggers: levers, which perform a single permanent action, and buttons, which perform repeated actions. The idea is that it is impossible to get stuck, because a door that has been opened will remain open forever. Here are the keys. Keys are non-consumable and non-stackable items, and locks are columns of water linked to a pressure plate, so the item sinks and is out of reach. You can also drop anything else if you cannot find a key. The color of the doors also corresponds to the color of the key in its lock. The map contains a checkpoint system. Each sign indicates a possible interaction concisely. They also have a unique and very visible red light. Here the checkpoint has opened a door. Pistons retracted to make the gravel fall. Here's how the door opens from the side. This action was unique, because if the pistons moved each time the checkpoint was pressed, they would push a row of gravel each time and you would see a hole appear in the door. So by default, the signal is active and maintains the door. All gravel doors are designed like this. This means that to put the door back in place, the map needs to be reinstalled. If not, you have to rebuild the door, but it's tedious, especially as certain ones are complex, like this one, which doesn't have enough space to fall because another part of the level is situated below. What a nightmare. Look at this mess. There isn't even any space left to show you the mechanism. Here is a reconstruction based on my organic memory. The sand blocks break on torches, then a stream of water is released to break the torches, and a second, thinner row of sand comes to fill the gap. Meanwhile, a stream of water has carried away the broken blocks, because when an item is crushed by a block, it tends to float back to the surface, and it mustn't be possible for the player to collect them. The fireworks serve as a diversion to allow time for the blocks to be cleared away. I could have used lava, but in the event of an update changing the code that prevents fire from spreading, the entire level would catch fire.
Oh shit, here we go again.
The door also had to be very thin because it is positioned between another door and a large room. There is also a trigger to stop the system when passing through the door to prevent lag. Nowadays, it would be possible to do this with command blocks and therefore connect everything remotely, but it would be less intuitive. And if the commands were updated, the entire map could be broken. The appeal of Minecraft lies in reverse engineering. You can see and understand how a lever opens a door. This map has many simple examples that don't require learning 500 command lines. Back to the tutorial. This step displayed tips in the chat. Obviously, the command is now obsolete. The idea is that the player teleports to a pressure plate, which is connected to a command block supposed to display text. This room is used to optimize the render distance, which at the time could be a problem because Minecraft loads blocks, even those behind walls. And since the map is designed to be immersive, some players were unknowingly loading enormous areas, and the game lagged heavily. As I anticipated that many players wouldn't pay attention, some levels are completely isolated geographically to optimize resources. The orange color is the maximum distance for this map. It ensures that players cannot see another level in the distance. The green color is the render distance of PC games of the period, and the blue color is the render distance on PlayStation. In modern versions of Minecraft, it is possible to automate this configuration when launching an adventure map, but at the time we had to be creative to encourage players to check their settings. It's already great that it doesn't crash. Here we are in the Tomb Raider 2 spawn, which I had designed to be as simple as possible. There had been 2 updates to fix reported bugs. I noticed that the chest texture has changed. The question mark should still be visible. Overall, the books are still readable. Here's what it looked like 11 years ago. I will first visit Croft Manor to test the shader. The map was reproduced to scale. 1 block in Tomb Raider corresponds to 4 blocks in Minecraft. Surprisingly, this works quite well, except for jumps, so beacons are hidden in various places to guarantee longer jumps. Nowadays, it would be possible to apply the effect constantly everywhere. The texture pack was meant to hide this effect, but again, the texture name has changed. The manor is based on the one from the first game, then was extended to match the second game when I updated the map. This ability to see through windows was not available in the first game. For a fan, these details made the map interesting. The main hall. Sorry about the crates, they're far too iconic to be removed. This map also gave you the chance to see what the levels look like as a whole. 3D maps appeared later, and it is now possible to verify that this map was indeed to scale. Guess which level it is? A giant, very high up level with a long slide at the start? It's the Temple of Shan. Here, these are 3 levels that follow one another in the original game. Guess which ones? It's Venice, Bartoli's hideout, and Opera House. Finally brought together. Isn't that so cool? I think it's brilliant, as it shows that the developers designed these levels like a city. Look, I'm flying over Croft Manor. I wonder if this is legal. Of course it is. I'm Lara Croft. So, this is what the labyrinth looks like from the sky. Okay. The first map did not take render distances into account, so you can see a level. Perhaps Palace Midas, I do not remember. Don't you think you've seen enough? Tooltips did not exist yet, so they should be disabled. The altered sound of the bullets hasn't changed. Projectiles make a gun-like noise, but their volume has been reduced. Oops. Let's go to the gym. Fun fact, the walk key also prevents you from falling in Minecraft. You cannot grab ledges, but jumps are similar. Ladders indicate that a long jump is possible. The pork chop should display the texture of a small medipack. The water looks nicer than before, but the swimming sounds are no longer up to date, as the aquatic update added some variations. It is not possible to see through this ceiling in the original game. I enabled a mod that allows shooting and eating while running. Here I added a bonus room. This empty space will be used in Tomb Raider 3 for the relic room. The parkour works surprisingly well. This cubic Lara is faster than the original. No slippery slopes in this map, and we don't miss them. It wasn't possible to swim that fast before. It was a flaw, as Lara is supposed to be quick underwater. I still hope we'll get zip lines in Minecraft one day. Of course I did it. I'm Lara Croft. You can see that the beacon is hidden in the central chimney. The manor works so well in Minecraft. I added bonuses around the manor. On the minimap, you can see that the recommended render distance doesn't extend beyond the level. So far, no lag. Now you can hear birds. Probably finches, but I'm not a bird specialist except for pigeons. But who cares? There's a bonus building over there. Hop, hop, hoop. Hop. Hop, hoop. Quiz. The quiz consists of identical rooms, and you teleport to the next when you click the correct answer. This method is used in the levels to create the illusion of a dynamic environment. Some levels thus have multiple versions, with the duplicated doors connected. The trick is to have the two parts close to each other so that the chunks are already loaded. The most obvious examples are in the cistern or with the pool and offshore rig. But this applies to all locations where the environment changes. Lara is extravagant, and I felt a private roller coaster belonged here. I noticed that minecart physics have not changed, which is important because many timers function using minecarts. Here, this is the Venice Bell. This timer lasts 40 seconds and opens the level's exit door, but in case of failure, the player needs to be able to restart the timer, so it's a button. The problem is that if they click it multiple times in quick succession, it will send several consecutive signals. The signal will arrive multiple times, and the door will open and close repeatedly, not to mention the lag. To fix this, the button only launches the minecart along a track connected to the system. So spamming the button doesn't change anything since there is only one minecart. And for those who really can't manage it, there is a backup lever that opens the door permanently. Back then, the boats were still breakable, and since swimming was slow, it was very difficult. The note blocks are placed beneath the level so they can be heard when running towards the exit door. Roller Coaster 1 is really good value. The file that manages damage sounds is still the same. Archery. The snow thickness was a novelty in 2014, and many players ignored that arrows could activate wooden buttons. This will be useful in the Catacombs of the Talion, where Lara has to shoot at bells. I added a mod to improve foliage. I noticed the game plays different footstep sounds depending on the surface, which was not the case before. A villager appears on the minimap. Fans will know who it is. Ouch! Lara has an issue with gravity. The cake was already there. I had completely forgotten. A cookie dispenser, just what was missing at Croft Manor. I want the whole box. Name tags have been erased. He should be called Winston. It was possible to access the roof via a glitch, so I added a bonus room. The time has come to test the levels. For now, here are the regions of the map that have already been loaded. It looks like a motherboard. The problem in Minecraft is that there is no button to return to the main menu. And because adventure mode disables the use of commands, the only way to go back to the menu is to die. For this reason, checkpoints cannot store the player's position directly at their location, as the player would constantly respawn there whenever they wanted to leave a level. Adding a return to menu button to every checkpoint would work, but it would look too distractive. The idea was therefore to send a redstone signal from the checkpoint to the menu to unlock a door leading to the next checkpoint's button. However, this fails because redstone signals are limited by the render distance, and since the levels are spaced out to reduce lag, the signals never reach their destination. The solution is to keep the menu as the respawn point and use the player as the signal. Here is how it works. Activating a checkpoint teleports the player to the menu, which loads the chunk where the player appears. They spawn on a pressure plate that immediately teleports them back to their previous location. Because this happens almost instantly, the surrounding area does not have time to load. The pressure plate remains pressed and is connected to the door. When the player dies and returns to the menu, the nearby chunks load properly, including the active plate, which then opens the door. Despite this system, the testers found it difficult to realize that a door had opened as it was invisible. For Tomb Raider 2, the system was improved by giving each level its own menu. Each unlocked checkpoint lights a lamp and displays text. The secrets also unlock rewards. This shortens the distance to travel before resuming the game. Unfortunately, item-giving commands no longer work in modern versions of Minecraft, so the map must be played in version 1.7.9 to access these features. Or I will have to update dozens of command blocks. Here is what it should look like on the older version. To generate the sound, I had replaced the noise of a chicken's cry, which is why mobs must not spawn, otherwise we end up with this sort of horror. Time to settle down. There should be a bear here, but they were only added to Minecraft 2 years after this map. There are no enemies in this first section because the map has a rule that prevents mobs from spawning. If I placed them manually, they tended to disappear. It was only later that I realized they could be put in a dispenser for which I replaced the texture to make them invisible. Yet another thing that still needs fixing. Another problem was that some mobs could walk on the checkpoints, and teleportation alone was enough to make them vanish, which is why some checkpoints have a button. Sometimes I even added doors linked to the checkpoint to force the player to save before a difficult area. There is also a rule preventing the breaking of the scenery and a rule that keeps items upon death. I've noticed that it is no longer possible to place an item in creative mode, which prevents placing the pistons in level 3. This section is an example of cool design, but one that caused problems. Even though it seems obvious that the pistons should be placed like the others, most testers couldn't manage it. They often placed the block incorrectly, and because the map forbade breaking blocks, they became stuck. This is probably why this mode now prevents placing anything at all. I've also noticed that some items now float and can no longer reach the pressure plate located under the water column, whereas back then, all items sank. In fact, the water is only necessary to move the item horizontally when no other method is possible. Nowadays, a hopper would be more practical. I've also noticed a change regarding item weight. In the obelisk of Commune Room, a sufficient number of emeralds was required to activate the door, but that number is now insufficient. This has also broken the Hand of Midas, which is unfortunate, as the room used to rain XP. Something in the water physics has changed because the obelisk that unlocks through the ceiling no longer worked. In this example, the water is used as a vertical signal. I couldn't animate the bridges, so I animated the obelisk instead. Other doors are ridiculously broken because sand falling onto soul sand now breaks. Who could have predicted that? The reason is that it's no longer considered a full block. Thanks, Mojang. Now I have to fix this damn door. At least the coded levers in Palace Midas still work. What am I doing? It's lovely around here. It looks just like the Lost Valley in Tomb Raider. Perhaps because this map is called Tomb Raider Minecraft Edition. The Tomb of Qualopec is the first level that works perfectly. How amusing. Holy cow, the tomb is collapsing. What is happening here? It's raining freaking swords! The underwater levels are better than they used to be, now that Steve has learnt to swim like Lara. Cubic Lara. Oh no, another problem with the soul sand. Imagine if we could find this sort of structure in Minecraft. I've been saying it for years. We need a volcanic biome. Imagine ashfall, geysers, and hot springs. It's a game about geology, after all. I've noticed that Steve is just as sensitive to fire as Lara, so best be careful. This room looks so much better with the shader. When I want to be careful, I walk. The blaze fits perfectly in the role of Natla, as it flies and also shoots 3 fireballs. For Tomb Raider 2, I added bonus rooms wherever possible. The same goes for the scenery, which is often extended to prevent players from leaving the level. The snowmobile still works. It just has a texture issue, so I destroy it. For some unknown reason, the shader pack makes this ceiling look awesome. I've located the submarine. The wreck shouldn't be far from here. Holy sh**! The enemies spawn correctly, but the springboards are broken, probably due to outdated code. They worked perfectly before. Adding the echo and the shader gives the underwater levels a mysterious feel. Some of the light rays are even perfectly placed. I'm using the Hysteria shader configured to allow changes in brightness and fog depending on the biome. It also works with Distant Horizon. The different weapons correspond to different levels of power enchantment. Back off! The important doors have sound effects as well as visual effects. For this one, the signal is sent before the teleportation, so that the explosions are synchronized with the visual change of the building. The use of fireworks is subject to regulations, and this video does not encourage anyone to use them in an unauthorized setting. The dragon's room isn't to scale, but who cares? There's nothing cooler than a golden dragon in a jade palace. There are also several faces during the fight, which are actually duplicated rooms with only the dragon changing. Its size is designed to conceal the system that makes it breathe fire. To activate it, we are briefly teleported inside the dragon when the room changes, but it happens too quickly to be noticed. There you have it. Tomb Raider Minecraft Edition, an old map best played in version 1.7.9, or explored in a more recent version. I've put the link in the description. Thanks for watching. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now flying over the Lost Valley. If you look carefully, you might be able to spot a rare dinosaur specimen. We would like to remind you that this airline is not sponsored, and any support is greatly appreciated to help keep this flight running. Who are you and what are you doing here? The toilets are just next door, sir.